to the Vet Tech Tap Room where you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And we actually have a really special episode coming to you tonight, not just because my cat Julius is back there, not just because I'm sitting in front of the fire, but you can't see him in this shot, but Dave is just in the next room.
I'm in his living room,
Yeah,
and
we
somehow he absconded the cooler background. I just have this lamp.
yeah. We are actually here together in the same house. We'll talk a
This
lot about
doesn't happen
this
that often.
as it goes. But first, Dave, I want to cheers you. Um,
Cheers to you, buddy.
cheers to travel.
Mm, that is good.
Delicious. For
Wow.
those of you tuning in, so this is a Ojos Negros from a Gun Whale brewery that Dave and I went to yesterday. So Dave is in town here, staying with me this weekend. Got here Thursday night, right, Dave? Thursday night, and it's now
Yeah,
Sunday night.
Thursday night.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because the Hive conference was in Anaheim this weekend. So we, Dave and I, are Hive champions. And if you're not familiar with what Hive is, I encourage you to go back and listen to our episode with Paige Allen. That had to be 2022, early 2023, Dave. We'll
Well,
link it in
this
the
is the
show
third
notes, but
one. Yeah, we'll link it
yeah,
in the show notes. But it was last. It had to be last year because this is the second year of doing the Hive
yeah,
conferences.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Paige is a RBT, and she was kind of a driving force in getting this Hive set up, which is through the NABC, who puts on VMX. And it's a very different concept, and it's a very different setup. And I don't want to get into all the explanation of it. I just encourage you to listen to the episode with Pam because she explains it all very well. But at the conference, there's like some clinical lectures and some clinical tracks, but there's also like the big focus is on networking, on
Mentoring.
professional development,
Yeah.
mentorship, basically how to make the veterinary technician profession a sustainable career. And so that looks at both inside the clinic with mentorship and all of that, and then also lots of opportunities outside the clinic. And Hive came up with this idea uh, through their people earlier, I guess early this year, for this
They reached out to us
champions.
like in April or May of this year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So for this thing called Hive Champions, and the champions are people in the field who have a little bit of a reach, can reach a lot of people to kind of recruit people to come to their conferences and help get the word out, but also who are technicians that are doing a lot of work in the field. And so there's some really there's a group of 10 of us, and that spans vet tech education, that spans governance, that includes you and I, that spans social media. It's a huge cross
There was
section of
somebody in the
individuals.
lab field as
Lab
well.
animal medicine,
Yeah.
yes, great, and just a wide swath of really great people. And so this weekend, this version of the Hive conference was here in Anaheim, which for those of you that may know, that's kind of in my backyard. The conference was about 30 minutes for me, and they had emailed Dave and I a few months ago, recruited us to be Hive champions. We didn't really know what that meant. We
We
basically
didn't know what that
showed
meant
up.
until yesterday.
We showed up to the conference and just kind of winged it, and we're along for the ride. We'll go through. We'll break it down. We'll go through a lot of it, but I think at the end of the weekend, we both can confidently say, Dave, I don't mean to speak for you, but that we're on board.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yes, it was great to see, and it's a conference that's for technicians by technicians, which I think is something that is very unique in this field. Um, and just having us be there to kind of promote it and to um, that panel is very there were a lot of vintage technicians on that panel. So I think something that we can speak from experience of where we were in this field and how we got to where we are. And I think that was one of the things that our panel was looking at. I apologize for my voice. I don't know if I'm just coming down with something. I don't know if Daphne gave me something or if I'm just overtired. But I've got I can hear in my earphones that I've got a little bit of a Barry White voice. So,
You're
Robin,
froggy.
when I come home, you're gonna love it.
Yeah. So the conference was only Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah,
So we went Friday. Well, you got here Thursday night. Friday, we basically took the day off and hit a couple of breweries and did
yeah.
a couple things and just had some fun. And then Saturday went to the conference and just basically took it in. Um, None of us really knew anybody. So the funny thing is, and Julius is joining me back on camera here. Um, we had Paige on as a guest. She's one of the
Yep.
champions, so we got to meet her in person.
And Sam
Sam
was
Geiling,
was a
who
guest. Yep.
has been a guest twice now.
Hmm.
You had met her previously at a
I met
conference. I had never
her.
met her.
Where did I
I
meet
think at
her?
AVMA or something.
Yeah, that's right. I met her at AVMA 2 years
Uh,
ago, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, so we got to meet her. She's doing incredible work. And we got to meet Alyssa Magis, who I hadn't, at
Hmm.
least I hadn't met, who had been a
I
previous
don't think
guest.
I'd met her in person before. I think I've
Yeah,
seen her around, but we never really
yeah,
introduced
she was
ourselves.
there. She's one of the champions with Mentor Vet, and then also I know probably a lot of you guys follow Sarah Parsons and what
Hmm.
really happens at the vet, and maybe you follow Peter Carlos, and I forget Dave. Maybe help me. Vet Tech in PJs
PJ's in there somewhere. I
something.
can't
Yeah,
remember his handle.
so they're both champions as well, and of course others too. But so we got to meet some people that had been previous guests on the podcast, which was super cool,
And some future
um,
guests.
and some future guests too. So that was a big thing for us this weekend was the networking part of it, which is a huge part of this conference. And what did we get? Like five guests that were going to
Four or
be
five guests that
four or
that
five
we
guests that
yeah.
we're going to be talking to in future episodes. And a couple of them are other champions. A couple of them are just other people that were there. I don't want to give it all away. I kind of want to leave some of it to.
And we got one lead for our May series, the mental health series. So
Yes,
that was
yeah, that
good.
was also super cool. So we got to see Charlotte Wack, who
Yep.
was there with VSPN, who was just always a treat to see.
Hmm.
And I mean, this conference, to be honest, I didn't actually see what it was in terms of cost and registration, but the food was absolutely
Oh,
delicious.
that was amazing.
There was tons of exhibitors, a lot of really good wide open space. The one kind of funny thing, which of course the conference has zero control over, but kind of the next, I guess, conference or event space over, but there was a lot of intermingling, a lot of shared space was a bodybuilder competition.
Yep.
So there was lots of really jacked men and women,
Very,
completely
very spray tanned.
spray tanned and in their very skimpy get-ups, walking along the hall, going in and out of their room, and like at least one of the tracks you kind of had to go through their space to get
Yep.
into the room, and we were kind of all out in this kind of like lobby quad area. So that was
And
just but like again, that was nothing Hive could control
right.
or anything like that. It was just
And
us
nothing wrong with that.
champions, and
It
nothing
was
wrong with that.
it
They
was
were they
fun.
were
It was
doing
fun
their
to be a part of
thing.
that. Yeah.
They were there to do their thing. We were there to do ours, and just kind of funny the way that it worked out. But yeah, and we also got to meet too Ellen Carraza, who was there
Yeah. Yeah.
speaking. She was a previous guest as well. We got to talk to
Yep.
her at lunch today. So I'm curious, what were some of your big takeaways?
The big takeaways, the networking part of it, I think was great. The mentoring part, I think, is also great to have people have that discussion of what makes a good mentor, and that was kind of Alyssa's deal.
Hmm.
Um, and not to be so trivial, but I was thinking about this with the food that they provided. I mean, they were mainly sandwiches, but they were
Hmm. It was box
amazing.
lunches, but it was an
Box lunches, but they
amazing.
were, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what they spent on the food, but it was not the normal conference.
Hmm.
lunch that you get where it's just kind of this saran wrapped.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
actually like way better than an IVEX box lunch.
yeah, I don't want to shout out to Ivex, but
I
it
yeah,
was.
yeah,
But
yeah,
they're doing it on a much grander scale. And this
sure,
and this
absolutely,
conference, they said
100%.
was what, about 500 people at this one.
I think there was 500 registered. I think that's what they capped it at, but who knows
Yeah,
how many actually
yeah.
attended.
So
But
I guess able to do a better lunch than normal, and the breakfast that they served every
hmm
day, it wasn't just like muffins
hmm
and pastries. It was like actual like scrambled eggs and
hmm
sausage and bacon. Like it was at the level of, when you're speaking at the bigger conferences, they give you like the speaker lounge, and it was kind of equivalent to the lunches that they give you there, where it's better than what they give to the people that are
yeah,
attending the conference. So, not to make that such a big deal, but I was thinking about this today, of how good the food was. In that, you go to a conference, and whether it's IVEX or AHA or any of the other conferences that are out there, if the food's bad, people talk about it.
yeah,
It doesn't stop them from going, but it's a negative thing, as
hmm
part of the experience. When the food is good, that I mean, it's great to talk about it and to make it a big deal, but it's kind of the negative thing is taken out of it. It's one of the positives. Um, a lot of times when I go to conferences, I hear people saying, "Yeah, the food's not really all that great. It's the same stuff that we got last time." And but just having that part of it, I think is something they're doing right. They're doing a lot of things right, but that's something that I think people are going to go back and talk about.
yeah,
Which that's not really a selling point, but it's a positive thing that people are going to say, "Oh yeah, the food was great."
yeah, yeah. I agree, and I think the cool thing was too, just like, and we heard a few people talk about this, the accessibility.
Yeah.
You mentioned this was for text by text, and
Hmm.
a major point of this conference is networking and career
Growth.
building and
Yeah, and growth.
professional growth and all of that. And the whole point is like accessibility. And they did a panel with all of us champions yesterday afternoon where they have all had all 10 of us up kind of in the central area, and there were other talks going on, so it wasn't like every attendee was in there, but you could
Yeah.
come as one of the sessions, or one of the tracks, you could come sit, and they had all these roundtables, and it was an hour of just Q&A, and all the champions answered different questions and things, and it
I
was
felt like we
all
could have done that for 2-3 hours.
absolutely, absolutely. It
Yeah.
was all like audience questions, and really, really good questions. One of the questions was another past guest who's been on a couple times, Amber LaRock, had no
Hmm.
idea she was going to be here this time. If you might follow her on Instagram, she's at VetTech and Travel. She's wonderful. We got to meet her at IVEX and didn't even know she was going to be here at this. Ran into her like basically right when we got there on
Yeah.
yesterday morning. But just a lot of really, really good Q&A too, and I feel like thinking about that kind of thing, you can't get that at a much bigger conference, especially when there's
Yeah.
veterinarians around. There
And
was a
I've
lot of
I've seen the panel
questions.
discussions, but they're not quite like that, where the
Mhm.
audience just gets to ask questions.
Right, and there was a lot of, I feel like, much more vulnerable questions because there was no veterinarians around. There
Yeah.
wasn't the concern of backlash or of, am I going to be judged for this kind of question, or whatever it was. So, um, and this was only the third conference.
Hmm.
They're still tweaking, and one thing I will say is they are very, very open and wanting feedback of
Yeah.
how to make it better, and what to change going forward. We know there's going to be a June 2025 Hive in Chicago. Hopefully, we're not spilling the beans there, but I don't think we are. There will be another one at least in 2025. We don't know when or where yet, but they're going to kind of move this around a little bit, or at least kind of go back and forth year to year. But when it's if and when it's back here, maybe in 2026, um, I'm hopeful that, like, our state association, Carveta, can have a presence
Yeah,
there because
yeah.
I think that's highly valuable. Hoping we, as the Vet Tech Cafe, can have more of a presence there. I think this one we were just kind of feeling things out. Didn't really know what to expect. Didn't really know where we fit in or how we
Or
fit
what we
in
were supposed to do.
or what we were supposed to do. And some of that's on us for not asking enough questions. But I actually think like this too was kind of one of the first. This was the first conference that all of the Hive champions were there in attendance,
Yeah.
all 10 of us. So also I think it was a unique situation in that respect. And they did though. So they had that panel yesterday, the Q&A with us kind of as a group, and then today they did another kind of Q&A where we were all individually at tables kind of to talk about our unique things. And you and I sat at a table, like I think initially even you and I were going to be separated and you were going to talk about relief work and
Yeah.
different career paths and I was going to kind of talk about remote work and all of that. And there wasn't a ton of people there, but there was a few people moving around, and we spent a good half of that session talking to Charlotte about mental
Yeah.
health.
Yeah.
And Ellen Carrazza came by, and we talked about some forensic stuff, which was
Yep.
super interesting. But just a lot of like unscripted,
Yeah.
like just conversation and
Hmm.
discussion about where we are, and for a lot of people in the field, where they're at, how they got there, what the heck is next, what options are available to them. And there, again, there's some clinical work kind of, or some clinical tracks in there too. Like you can still come and get CE and all of that stuff, but some really, really, really unique conversation that I haven't seen at other
Yeah.
conferences.
Well, and just being on the panel with the 10 other or the 8 other um champions, it was it was interesting to hear their take on,
Hmm.
the questions we get asked a lot, and to hear their perspective on it and hear where they came from,
Yeah.
um to and realizing that most of us were 20 plus years in the field, and all of us came from a slightly different background, but all had the same essential passion for this profession, which I think was very, very refreshing to hear, that there are so many different ways to get to where you want to be. And we had 10 examples of how people did it. And I felt like there was a lot of people out in the audience that were like, yeah, I want to get to where those people are. um, I want to figure out how they did it. And we all had a different answer, which I think is great. And we all had different perspectives on big issues that happened in the field. And, we had one person that asked about, uh, she termed it as ageism, or
Hmm.
how do you stay in this profession when you get older? And there are a lot of us that were on the older age spectrum, and we'd all done something different to stay in the space, which I think is very helpful for people to hear the different unique perspectives of how people got to where they are.
Yeah, and I mean, my hope is that, like, we talk all the time. We've heard for a long time the life expectancy in this field is five
Hmm.
years, right? And that's, but when I think about that, I think about back in the day when you and I were newer in this field, probably before we had our VTSs, maybe before we were in credentialed. Um, e- Social media wasn't a big of a thing. Like you worked at one clinic, and
Google was barely a thing
excuse
when
me,
we
if
started.
you had a good clinic, maybe you stayed a little bit longer than that. But
Yeah,
if you were
yeah.
in a clinic where all you did was clean the walls, it's easy to walk away and go find something else to do. And now I think that not only is it much easier to find a different clinical job, there are more jobs in the veterinary space, remote, non clinical jobs than there ever have been. And so hopefully, I had a really great conversation, both. It was a panel question and followed up with this person kind of on the side after the fact. They had said they had been in the field for 10 years and kind of felt like almost they it was too late to go get a credential.
Hmm.
And absolutely that's not the case, and turned into a really great discussion. But at the same time, like Now, if this is what you want to do, and if your current job is not going to support you to go do that, like absolutely, like I didn't get my credential till I was already an assistant for 14 years, so their
Yeah.
path was not very different from mine. But also, like, if you take all of that experience that that person has 10 years in and you can pair that with then a credential or an associate's degree or whatever, they will be unstoppable in whatever they can do outside the clinic. And I think that was a big thing. A big takeaway is like obviously we'll want to keep people in clinical medicine. We've got to make this sustainable
Yeah, we
career.
can't all leave clinical
We
medicine.
can't
We all have.
all
There's
leave
got to
to
be people in
go
there.
do other things, but the reality is it's a physical job. It's whatever else. In until I worked at Tufts, I never saw anybody that was going to retire as a veterinary technician.
Yeah.
And I know that they're out there, but it's also not very common that hospitals have it set up where you have 401ks and you can, you know, actually do that. And I hope that that goes by, but I feel like that 5 year life expectancy needle has to have moved
I think
because there
so.
are so many ways for people to stay in this
Yeah.
field and also like stay veterinary technicians even if they're just like profession adjacent where they're maybe doing
Yeah.
another job but like still kind of close by but still want to keep their credential too. So yeah, yeah, it was a
Well,
fascinating
even just your
experience.
job, working remote, doing poison control. That's a job that did not exist for technicians 5, 10 years ago,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
So,
it actually did.
oh,
I
it did.
tried, well, not on the remote level, but I tried, not that I tried. I actually looked into moving to Illinois in
Hmm.
2015 to go work at Animal Poison Control Center. Of course, it wasn't remote, but because I was alternate route, I could not move there and get
Hmm.
licensed there, and I'm still in that process because I'm supposed to be licensed in my role there, and I have to reapply. It's a
I
whole
should
other
clarify,
story.
Jeff. I'm old, so when I say 10, 15 years ago, I mean like the early 2000s.
Yeah, yeah, because 10 years ago, that was 2015.
Right. And 20
But
years ago was like the 80s.
you know, like the remote aspect of that job didn't exist, and they
Right.
were kind of moving that way just pre-COVID, and then COVID was kind of the kick in the pants to make it that way
Hmm.
realistically. But you know, I mean, even veterinary technicians in industry, in insurance, in teletriage, like we just talked to Leilani Mustillo, you know, in a very recent
Yeah.
episode. Like there are like none of that, and even we were saying, I think it was today, maybe it was yesterday, just looking around the exhibit hall, so
Hmm.
many of those companies that were there as sponsors they didn't exist
Right.
10 years ago in veterinary medicine and maybe one or two of them like a veterinary technician has a big hand in probably all business people or even veterinarians or whatever but basically like somebody that had an idea
Hmm.
identified a need and like carved out a path and made a business and you don't have to be a finance geek. You don't have to be an MBA. You don't have to be a veterinarian to do that. And I think that was a really big, like, overarching theme of this
Hmm.
weekend is that as veterinary technicians, you can do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. And I like you said, a lot of this stuff didn't exist before. Like
Yeah.
I looked around at the exhibit hall and some of the things that, the a lot of telemedicine stuff, the radiology part.
Hmm.
Um, what else was in there? Just some of the software companies that
Yeah.
were there that
Software,
and
Hound,
back
and
early on when we first started going to IVEX and to conferences, what did you see at the exhibit hall? You saw products that could
yeah.
be in your hospital,
Hmm.
not and occasionally there would be somebody that was like an architect that was helping to build hospitals. But other
Yeah.
than that, it was all products.
Yeah.
And now the products are now virtual things
Yeah.
or digital
Software,
things that can be, yeah,
IT, and
things that can make your business run smoother.
Yes, and one thing I want to shout out too. So I had a good conversation. So Hills was one of the big sponsors,
Yep.
and
Yep.
Vicky O'Grain was there, and I talked to her yesterday, and we were talking about this, and she had we were both kind of talking about this kind of conference for techs by techs, like as technicians in the hospital, we don't have a lot of purchasing power, right? We're not
Yep.
like
Yep.
so for a lot of sponsors, this isn't a good fit because we are not the ones that can sign off on buying their product. But the reality is that might be not be the case. We might not be the ones that can buy their product, but we're certainly the ones that are going to educate the
Hmm.
clients about their products. And
Yep.
and, and I kind of talked to her about the idea of if you take let's use Rimadyl as an example, right? Rimadyl, which this is not a sponsored episode. This is not a knock on
Let's
Pfizer
just call it
or
Carprofen. How about
anything.
that?
Let's call it carprofen. Sure. Carprofen you can get as a chewable tablet, right? So let's say a veterinarian prescribes carprofen for a dog for some injury. Who is going to go over the medication instructions? Who is the one that needs to tell the owner to keep those pills out of reach of the dog so they don't pull the bottle down and eat all 20 of them when the dog
Yeah,
goes home?
because
Because
they're
that's
flavored.
my job. That's those
Right.
I take those calls every day. Sorry, Julius is down here just going nuts. Um, but also like so a company that sells chewable carprofen, like yes, if you're at a conference like that, I'm not going to be the one to be able to buy a bunch of carprofen from you
Right.
as an account. But if you're there and you can educate me such that I can educate the clients, I
Hmm.
feel like that is at least, if not more so, an important aspect of this. And it was nice to see a lot of companies show up as sponsors, and I
Hmm.
think that that's a big like disconnect is that there's a lot of big companies, and we I'm not going to name any, I'm not going to call anybody out, but I think we can all think about it without really thinking too hard, that sell a lot of products that maybe the veterinarian prescribes or recommends, but it's the technicians that are doing the client education,
Hmm.
that are doing the follow up, that are doing all of that aspect of things. And if you don't teach the technicians what to do or what to say or about the product, like that's how sometimes things happen. And so I think that like there was a lot of these really unique companies there, but it was great to see a company like Hills who
Hmm.
still like believes in technicians and technician
Yep.
education. And it's not like anybody was walking out of there with a major Hills purchase, right? Like that's
Right.
not why Hills was there.
Right.
And I think that sometimes the big drug companies they miss that
Hmm.
aspect. Like that, yes, we're not going to make a big vaccine purchase, or we're not going to sign up to do a whole big drug order or whatever while we're there. But like, we are the ones that are going to be educating clients about your products and what have you. And I would really like to see representatives in the drug industry space kind of rethink a lot of that.
Hmm.
So,
Well, and the other thing is that we don't have the purchasing
Julius.
power, but we do have influence to say, hey, there's this new product that I saw at this conference, and bring it back to your doctor and say, hey, we should probably get this.
Yeah,
So we do have some. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's power, but it's influence.
yes,
To say
exactly.
this is a good product. I think we should use this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Or at least like have, schedule or set it up for that person to come into the clinic and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, further educate like yes, maybe I can't make that decision, but come talk to us as a staff
Hmm.
and to my veterinarian as to why like this is so great." And so yeah, I thought all the way around like um again, still some still a learning curve, still some stuff to try to make better, and I think they have the people in place that will want to do better and are still seeking input both from us as the champions, from attendees, from exhibitors to try to make it even better. Chicago and wherever else they go next year. But if and when a Hive conference comes to you in your area, I highly recommend you look at the program.
Yeah.
And again, it's a lot of non-clinical stuff. There is some clinical stuff, so don't get me wrong, but it's more focused on connection, on like professional development, leadership, a lot of different kind of non-clinical ideas, and I think a lot of people, especially Dave, like people that have been in this field a long time,
Hmm.
that I think kind of need some direction as far as either career paths or also like not being terrible to people just coming along,
Yeah.
and how to actually like work with people that are just starting out. Some really really unique material.
Well, and I think also we were talking to Sam about this, that the conference has evolved since it started last year. Like,
Hmm.
and a lot of that is from the feedback that they're getting. So they're taking that information that they get as feedback, and hopefully making everything better. So by the time next year rolls around, it could have a whole other different facet
Yeah.
involved. Paige was even telling me she wanted to have an entire track that was just what we did as a panel,
Hmm. Hmm.
where it's just
Yep.
a full day or
Non-race
half a
approved,
day,
just
non-race
just
approved,
just a lot of
just conversations,
discussion.
which
Yep.
I th- I think would be appealing to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so. And again, it's hard to justify like putting that on the program because that's, people need hours and they need to
Yeah,
recertify and whatever else, but also like you can still get a lot of CE hours, but also, you know, uh, we said this today, like never once did we feel like we had to rush from here to go there and
hmm,
whatever else.
yeah,
We weren't being herded around, or it was very laid back. It was very not stuffy. It was
yeah. It's very
very
casual. Yeah,
casual and just, I mean, I truly felt like focused on the attendees. It was not
hmm, yeah,
a didn't really feel like a corporate business or that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
so
sometimes you go through those exhibit halls and you kind of keep your head down because you know that they're just going to try to sell you something, and
yeah.
that was not.
Mm-mm.
I didn't feel that way at
No,
all
no,
with the
absolutely not.
exhibitors. It
Absolutely
was
not.
more of and there wasn't like, I don't want to say there wasn't a lot of like giveaway stuff, but there wasn't like, a lot of times the exhibitors will do the thing where they have stuff to give away, but you got to go talk to
Hmm.
them, listen to their
Hmm.
spiel for a little bit.
You gotta scan your badge,
Yeah,
or
and
yeah.
scan the badge so that they can send you an email and all that stuff. And trust me, I exhibit with my company at conferences for Action Vet, so I get that, where we want to talk to you and explain what we do. That I didn't feel that way at all
Mm-mm.
with the exhibitors at this one.
No. Now, one other thing that was super cool that before we kind of talk about other stuff that I thought was unique that I hadn't seen before. So at each conference, they have an artist
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
who is, I don't think a veterinary technician, but like a sketch artist who will go into like maybe two or three different lectures with like it had to be what, 3 foot by 5 foot
Yeah, yeah, a pretty big
large
like poster
like
board.
poster board thing, and they basically sketch the lecture. And so kind of like top middle is the title and maybe the credentials of the person, and then they sketch like just kind of like a walking path that's kind of long and
Of where the
winding,
conversation goes. Yeah.
where the conversation goes, and maybe some high points of some different slides, and some, just a sketch of probably some pictures that are on different slides, and it comes together in this huge like 3 foot by 5 foot poster board. And so what they had kind of on the side of the exhibit hall is this person had been at the first couple Hive events and had done this for a few lectures, and they had those shipped there so you could kind of see the couple he had done previously, and then he did two more at this conference, at least yesterday that we saw, and maybe that he did two more today, I don't know. but again, I hadn't ever really seen anything like that, and that was super unique. And again, I thought just kind of gave it a little bit of a like niche
Yeah.
feel to it that like again, you're not going to see that at a major
No.
conference, and I thought that was super cool too.
I was thinking like I want that guy to come to some of my lectures so I can like look at it after the fact. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good
Yeah,
way of laying out what I just said. Or
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
have him like hire him to like listen to our podcast episodes and kind of follow the path with our
yeah,
with our guests and what they're talking about.
yeah,
I think that would
yeah.
be very very cool to see.
For sure, for sure. So anyway, I, again, this was the last Hive event for 2024. We know there's a June event in Chicago. I think Dave, you're at least probably going to be going there. Spoiler
I
alert,
don't know that it's
Elevators.
official yet, but I that
Yeah,
those are the rumors that we
those
heard.
are the rumors that we're
Yeah.
hearing. Spoiler alert, I'm supposed to be having a second child like maybe the week or two before that, so I
Yeah.
don't know if I'll be able to join, probably not. But at least maybe you'll be there because I know you've been itching to get back to
Yeah,
Chicago. But
I've wanted to go back to Chicago since I was there first time.
yeah, but hopefully if there's another one maybe later in the year, I can swing it and make it happen. But I highly recommend if Hive comes to your area and you're looking for some not just CE. I mean, we frankly, it's 2024. We can get medical CE
Yeah.
anywhere, both online and in person. But if you're looking for something a little bit different, I highly recommend Hive.
Yeah, I was very impressed with it, and the fact that it's put on by Tex for Tex.
Yep,
That's,
agreed, agreed.
I mean, that's a big selling point for me.
It's
And
yep.
like we said, we didn't look at we don't know what the cost of registration was, but we're told that it was very affordable, which
Mm-hmm,
I think is another great thing,
mm-hmm,
um, especially on a technician's salary or on a technician's CE budget, which
mm-hmm.
is not always that great.
Right.
But I feel like that's one of the big cool and just seeing the people and talking to some of the attendees, everyone was seemed to be very much enjoying the experience and
Mm-hmm.
happy that they made the decision to go there.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
that's one of the things that I took away from that.
Agreed. Completely agree. So definitely check it out. And it will be posting about it as more details are released about any future events or what have you, because I think as part of it is like we get a discount code or whatever else. So as we have more information about any future events, we'll post about that too. So I think another big thing we wanted to talk about was we put up a new episode today
Yep.
with Aaron Henninger, who is the executive director for CACVT, which is the Colorado Association for CVTs, which in Colorado they're now called RVTs. We talk a little bit about that kind of transition too. You know, but what I think was fascinating about this episode was, you know, she had been on our list to talk to for a
A
long
while ago,
time
yeah.
because CACVT is a very, very strong tech organ, state vet tech association. And as somebody who is a past president of California RVT Association, which is like a lot of great people working really hard to make it a good association, like we are not nearly on the same level as CACVT.
Mhm.
I have no problem saying that. There's a couple of states that are just like a tier above everybody
Mhm.
else, and Colorado was one of them. And so we had wanted to talk to her for a long time about that. And then this whole Prop 129 thing kind of came and went. And so we reached out to her, or basically just kind of through comments on a social media post. But what I loved was like before we actually, so you guys know when we have guests on the show, we we send them a document, and it's all of our recording information. It's the hosting site, it's tips for a good recording as far as like audio and whatever else, but it's also a lot of our questions and discussion points. So our interviews are not scripted, but it's basically like, we try to let the conversation kind of organically grow, but if a topic ends, then we have something to fall back on as far as the next
Yeah.
question to ask a guest and to to prompt another kind of thought provoking discussion. And Aaron, before we started recording, was said to us like, "Hey, my thought is," and also before I get to that, when we are kind of emailing our guests back and forth, these episodes, they're our guests' episodes. They are the focus. They are the highlight. They are the Vet Tech Cafe is basically a platform for them to come on and tell us about their thing. And so we always tell our guests in the email conversation, we want you to help steer the conversation because we want to make sure we talk about what you want to talk about. We
Hmm.
want to talk about what they want you, the listeners, to hear about. And so Aaron said just before we started recording, like, hey, I know we're here to talk about Prop 129, but like, I really don't want to give this thing any more oxygen. Like, it's already kind of blown up. And she kind of, maybe not in so, I don't remember how she exactly phrased it, but she said, I want to bring the conversation back to veterinary technicians
Yep.
and what our organization is doing for veterinary technicians and for veterinary technician specialists or VTS in the state of Colorado, how we are helping them and kind of how this integrates with that and how we move forward. And so, a huge bunch of our questions was about Prop 129, and we just kind of reframed the questions and we,
Yeah.
we pivoted. We still talked about it, right? We got some key
Yeah.
information
Yeah.
out there.
I mean, we had to. That was one of the main
We had
reasons we
to.
brought her on. Yeah.
That was the big thing. But also, like, then where does that leave vet techs in
Hmm.
their state, and what else? Like how did which I thought was fascinating, how they even got from the initial discussion to Prop 129 being on the
Hmm.
ballot. Like, if nothing else, listen to the episode for that kind of discussion because that was not the original intent.
Right.
That was not like they were having these discussions for a whole completely separate reason that they came to like kind of a joint decision, and then some other people put this on the ballot and it kind of took off and whatever else. But it was really really cool that she was like, no, I like we can talk about this and I'll answer your questions, but also like I want to talk about veterinary technicians in the state of
Hmm.
California and like the work that our organization is doing for them and for VTSs. And so we kind of covered some of the main points, but then brought it back to vet techs in Colorado,
Well,
which I
and
thought was
I
was
think
really
that
cool.
if we only focused on the Prop 129, it could have turned into a very negative conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that we just touched on it and brought it right back to what she's doing
Yeah.
as executive director for
Mm-hmm.
Colorado VetTechs, it made it a very positive conversation, which I think
Yeah.
is was a much better way to approach that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So, super, super cool stuff. One other thing too, since there'll be one more episode probably before we have our next tap room too. Our episode after that, we've already recorded as well, just kind of a coming attractions. Very unique perspective. So, of course, we generally only have veterinary technicians on the podcast, which this person is a CVT, but it's a CVT that is now in vet school and is a second year vet student and has some really, really unique perspectives on the veterinary technician profession and title protection and job roles and things like that.
And
And I think
tech utilization, yeah.
utilization and collaboration and I think that will carry that on into their career, which is going to be kind of a niche area of the field. So I highly recommend to staying tuned for our next episode, which will so, of course, tonight's episode was the 24th. The next one will be, I believe, December 8th. That was actually going to be tonight's episode, but we were able to
Yep.
get
Yep.
Aaron on and talk about the Prop 129 thing while it was still kind of a hot topic and fresh on everyone's mind. So we pushed this episode back, but that next episode too is fantastic discussion,
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
think for a lot of us as veterinary technicians, a lot of what that person has to say is what we want to hear
Yeah.
our veterinarians
Yep.
say. and I thought that was, and that episode comes from a previous guest who recommended her. We'll get into that a little bit later time. We actually uh, kind of actually already talked about that too on this tap room. That
Hmm.
person, we met them this weekend at Hive, but so that kind of brings it full circle. But
Hmm.
that was also just a really
Yeah.
fantastic discussion.
Yeah, and I think just her like you said, she's doing what we've been asking for, is to
Hmm.
have a veterinarian that understands the role of a credentialed veterinary technician, and um, where we fit in the space, and how we can help them do their jobs better,
Yeah,
by letting us do our jobs.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so to kind of bring it home, my I just got a notification. My battery's only at 10%. Dave, I feel like your voice is less than that.
I would say
Uh,
my voice battery is about 5% right now.
yeah, and I know you've got an early flight home in the
Yeah.
morning, so we're gonna call it a night here soon. But anything else you want to talk about or get out before we sign off here?
No, it was great to come out here and see your house and see your kid and see I haven't seen Molly in uh,
Since
since the
before
last
Daphne
time
was
she was
born. Yeah,
since before Daphne was born. Yeah. So that was fun to come out and see them. And hopefully uh get to come out here again. We talked about doing some recover stuff, so
hmm,
hopefully I'll get to come out here again soon. We didn't get to experience too much of like the Southern California weather because we were inside for most of the time, but
yeah, yeah.
all good, all
It's late
good.
November. Yeah, and
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's gonna be cold when I get back home. It's been like Robin's been telling me it was below freezing one of the days that we were here. So,
yeah, yeah. Well,
yikes.
we were at least well above that this weekend. So,
Yeah,
yeah. So, anyway, caffeinators, it's I think this is not going to upload till probably next week or something, but
well,
it's
it's live right
Thanksgiving
now.
week. Yeah, we're live right now.
It's live on
But it's
YouTube.
yeah.
I'll
So
upload the audio for next Sunday.
next Sunday. But yeah,
Yeah,
happy Thanksgiving.
yeah,
If you're working, I hope your clients are kind. I hope your patients don't bite. I hope that your shifts are easy, and thank you for doing the work that you do as somebody that always worked weekends and holidays,
yep,
and the
yep.
both of us, um, mad mad respect and thank you to you, all of you, for doing that. We hope it's a really good Thanksgiving holiday, and then we'll see you in December from the Vet Tech Cafe.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I think that was too long.